Okay, so let me begin by introducing each of our panelists. And panelists, please feel free to correct me if I get any names or spellings or, well, I guess it wouldn't be spellings, but pronunciations wrong. So we have Ms. Kelly Barron, who is the Chief Academic Officer of Waller ISD. She's an ESC 4. We have Dr. Jamie Farber, who is the Director of Guidance and Counseling at Northwest ISD from ESC 11. Ms. Tiffany Rodriguez, Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling of Conroe ISD in ESC 6. Dr. Cynthia Sid of Westlake ISD in ESC 1. And we have Ms. Joyce. Joyce, I'm going to get your last name right. Give me a moment. Kaupick, school counselor in DeRosette ISD in ESC 16. So panelists, correct me if I got any of your pronunciations or locations wrong.
I probably should, yeah, I should have said this in my email probably. We're DeRosette.
DeRosette, okay,
DeRosette.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yep. It's hard to spell and say.
Yes, it sure is. I had to look it up multiple times. Okay, so it looks like we are all spotlighted, and let's begin. Our first question to the panel, it's kind of an overall summary of y'all's experience with counselor work time. So this is a question for everybody, and we'll just kind of go down the row. Could you provide a brief overview of your experience of submitting for TAC 611073E or counselor work time, as we're calling it today? And we'll start with, because I see her first on my screen, Tiffany Rodriguez. Would you go first?
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I tell you, once we first got this news, I was like, oh my goodness, because I just stepped into this role. So it was a little bit overwhelming. But after we sat down as a team, we do have a team, but after we sat down as a team and reviewed everything, our assistant superintendent, who's over student support services, she was very familiar with submitting different reports to TEA. So she kind of calmed our nerves, and we all gathered information. We all had something to gather and to collect the data, and we met as a team to complete the entire process. So because it was a team effort, it ended up being a pleasant one. After we went through the entire process, you go through the submission, and then after you get the results. So we were happy about that piece, that we were able to provide everything that we needed for that report.
Fantastic. Let's hear from Ms. Barron, Kelly Barron.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. While our ISD is a little bit different than Conroe, the Chief Academic Officer is the one who does everything with school counseling within our district. We do not have a counseling director or counseling supervisor. We just have amazing counselors in our district. So, I sat down and worked with them, but the big shout out I will give to is Region 4. So once we received the letter, I was able to reach out to Twiana Collier within Region 4, and we met and reviewed actually our plan thoroughly before we even submitted it to TEA. And then I'm used to doing reports through federal programs as well. So then I also sat down and met with our legal counsel from our school district just to make sure what we were putting was correct and what we submitted in. But my big shout out will go to our counterparts at Region 4 that are just such a blessing to us as I call it a medium-sized school district that is always seeking guidance and support like that. And so shout out to Region 4 for being a great friend and a great resource to talk us through the process.
Let me move to Ms. Kaupick. Sorry, I'm gonna struggle with that the whole time. How about your experience?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm from DeRosette, which is a very, very small district up in the far northeast corner of the Panhandle. And so my superintendent and I were in this together. I mean, I am the counselor here, and she's superintendent. And I mean, we do have a principal, but he was brand new in the position. And the superintendent is a former counselor. So she was, I mean, she was great. She was great. She pretty much filled out all of the information because a lot of the stuff I wasn't really familiar with. I mean, it's for the board policy and a lot of the things that were required. She took the lead on that, and I gave her my information, and she pretty much filled out the required numbers and stuff based on what I had given her. So, and we also, like I say, worked with other schools in our region to try to make sure we kind of had things in the correct order. But as she said, it was kind of daunting for us because we were, you think, oh gosh, what if we get randomly selected? And we got randomly selected for everything under the sun last year. So she was just like, okay, it's another one. Just give me your stuff and we'll get it done. So we had some questions and stuff, but we got most of those answered. And like everyone, we did the best we could. And we were ready for some feedback because we really didn't know what to expect in the beginning. I mean, did we really answer the questions as we were supposed to, or did we have all this stuff? So, but she was great. And like you said, we survived and we're still smiling.
And here you are on the panel now. So
Yes.
isn't that full circle? Dr. Sid, tell us your experience.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Yes? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am from Westlake ISD. I'm the Director for Student Support Services with, I belong to Region 1 ESC. So I didn't really receive the email that we were getting audited. So I received a note or an email from Yovan Salinas, our from Region 1, telling me that we got selected for the audit. And so that was a struggle itself looking for that email. So we had to contact our technology department trying to figure out where that email is. So you might think that it was, my reaction was weird, but I was very, I didn't panic at all. I was very actually happy that we got selected for that audit. Basically because I was thinking to myself, because I'm in charge of the 48 counselors, among many other things that's on my list, my to-do list. So I was trying my best to make a difference with the 80-20, but I was not really moving the needle as much as I wanted to. But I knew this audit would actually make a difference and help me out with the compliance aspect. So I once I received the actual email that we were selected for that audit, I kind of forgot about it for quite some time, but it was like a cloud hanging over my head, but I wasn't worried at all because we already had something in place. But the week prior to the deadline, so I got to work right away and I kind of did it by myself and submitted. It was easier than I thought it was. That I had it in my head that, oh my goodness, I need to get started right away. But it didn't take that long to submit all the documents because it was I think 4 or 5 questions only.
Wonderful. Dr. Farber, can we hear you yet? If not, it's okay. We can have you can put your answers in the chat, but let's see if we can hear you.
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I said, if you want us to tell the truth, I think I did panic at first of like, oh my gosh, what's going to be required? And I went all the way through the survey to see what the questions were and accidentally submitted it blank. So if ever you do a TEA survey and accidentally submit it blank, just know. But then once I saw all of the questions and what was required and knew who to go to, it wasn't as daunting as what you might think in the beginning. So we had everything that we needed. It's just scary when you first find out.
Absolutely. And, I think all of us, myself included at TEA, I mean, I was scared all of last year because we were trying to roll this out, from the agency side. And And it's like, here we all are sitting on the panel, and it's like I said a few minutes ago, huge full circle moment. So our next question can be for any of the panelists who want to answer. So, feel free to just jump in, panelists, if you want to answer. What would you recommend that districts have already completed and on hand so they are prepared if they're randomly selected?
I would say definitely have your policy, know where your 80-20 policy is, and whatever tool report your final report, whatever that looks like, make sure you have a copy of all your results of your findings from the previous year.
Fantastic. Any other panelists want to answer that second question?
Yes, I would recommend to, because one of the questions on the needs assessment or the audit is asking how many counselors are not in compliance when it comes to non-counseling duties. So make sure that you have already like a system in place to figure out how many of those counselors are not in compliance. And also, so I have something like that already. So we have to upload a document that summarizes the annual assessment, and it's for every single counselor. So for sure have something a system that's already in place. So for me, we're a big Google district. So all I did was put together something similar to what's on I believe, page 60 of the Texas model. I put that on a Google sheet and kind of program at the very bottom like a pie chart, so it would calculate the columns and the rows, and that will actually help me with the non-compliance as far as non-counseling duties for each counselor is concerned. And those are the two major documents. If you have those two, then you're good to go.
Third
Question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I might add something on that, Stephanie. We, just our superintendent, she said something that would have helped her too was to keep all of the board documents handily available. Because, we knew this was coming, but we're, like I said, we're a small district, so a lot of us wear a lot of different hats. And so when we had to start working on our program, my job description had to change because from old school, the jobs that counselors had and all the different hats. So she had to do some restructuring within the board on the job description and some policies of of where my salary came from and all kinds of different things there. So she said too, for her, as the financial part of it, and the board policy, she had to dig to find where those things were changed and where they were added to or whatever, when they were changed or tweaked a little bit. So she said to have those on hand too. Anything that was the board had to part in, she needed to have readily available.
Thank you for adding that. That's very important.
And then Stephanie, one thing I'll add also was when the letter came out, I know if you've never done a Qualtrics survey within TEA, sometimes, you click and it submits automatically, as Jamie said. One thing I would always suggest is that it was great because I emailed the case team and they sent me was the PDF of the questions because I wanted to know what the questions were before I got into the Qualtrics survey. And so that was so helpful when I emailed the team at TEA and I said, hey, can I just have those questions ahead of time? So I know what I'm answering before I go into the Qualtrics survey, just because I know how those surveys work at the very end. So that was just a great tip that I would give anybody that does get selected is to request the PDF of the questions up front.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So our third question actually comes from a school counselor leader that I saw pop into our meeting today a little while ago. And the question is, in your opinion, how often should a school counselor be tracking their time? Should it be daily? Should it be weekly? Should it be snapshot? How has your district interpreted the code related to tracking frequency? And this question is for any panelist to answer.
So I'll get started. So for us, our counselors try their very best to log in their data daily. So one thing that we're doing different this year is that our principals and some of the assistant principals want to look at the data so they can help us with the non-counseling duty portion to make sure that they're in compliance. So they look at the data daily. So I made them co-teachers. I don't know if you're familiar with the Google Classroom, but you can add people so they can look at it, look at those class assignments. I call it class assignment, but really it's the log. So the first thing, I had just had a meeting with all the principals last week, showing them how to access the data for their counselors. That the first thing they should look at is first thing is if the counselors are logging it in daily. If they're not, they need to remind their counselors, campus counselors. And then the second part they should look at is the pie graph at the bottom, and look at the non-counseling. If they see on the pie graph that non-counseling is close to like 20%, to pivot and make some changes, right? If their counselors are doing 504, for example, it's counting as non-counseling duties. They have to say, hey, one of the assistant principals, let's help out. Maybe we can take over from now on because they're already going to be over 20%. So so that's very good. That's one good thing about the audit, because now everyone in our district, from the superintendent, deputy, assistant superintendents, campus principals, assistant principals, everybody knows Senate Bill 179 counselors time, 80/20. Everybody is on top of it. So, and I give props to the audit for that.
I think, Stephanie, I collect the data at the district level weekly. And so we have approximately, and some of you are smaller districts, larger districts, we have approximately 80 counselors. So they submit the reports weekly. I did leave it up to them how they're tracking their daily time. Our IT department worked with them. I mean, they have fancy spreadsheets. I don't collect the data at that depth. I collect it by the 4 categories and the non-counseling duties. And so I've allowed them to use their own systems that work for them to then submit my form every Monday.
I can say in Waller ISD, we do the daily reporting, but they don't really report because ours is based on their Google Calendar. We do a color coding system within Google Calendar that pulls into a Google Data Studio that myself, the principals, the counselors can view at any point in time. We can look at the overall district. We can look at the grade level span. We can look at a campus, or we can go down and look at the individual counselor themselves. We can export it to an Excel spreadsheet to look at it that way as well. And so by looking at it that way, it allows us to look at it monthly with our principals to see where our hot spots are and our opportunities are for the year. But it also allows our counselors to see what their time looks like as well.
Fantastic. Next question,
Can I
panelists.
share?
Oh, yes,
If you
please,
want?
please,
I'm
please,
sorry.
please.
So we don't do daily here in Conroe ISD. We do monthly. We take 1 week per month we start in September and we end in April, and we do not track in December. And that has been very successful for us. We have 187 school counselors. So our team, as soon as they submit that week, we're going back at our next meeting and we're reviewing the data. And then for those campuses that are struggling, then we go out and, have conversations and try to build support and help them in those areas. So we felt like it would be a little overwhelming to do daily based on our needs and everything that we have. We just need a snapshot of what they're doing monthly. And it has been very eye-opening, and they've done a very good job at it. So that's how we do it. We also use Google. We use a Google platform in collecting that data, and we have it set up too where we can review by elementary, intermediate, junior high, high school data. And so then by feeder zones, looking at it, the data that way as well. So, but it's been very helpful. One of the things that we've noticed is that we've been able to advocate for more. I know it's hard, but we were able to advocate for more support at one campus because of it. And we were very successful in doing that because our assistant soup said, well, hey, we can use Title I funding for a school counselor at that campus. And so that was a huge success, but it all went back to the data.
So next question is, panelists, tell us about your experience with the ease or the difficulty of the process of compiling and submitting your counselor work time information. And this is for anybody who wants to answer, any panelist.
I think that I would recommend, if you're not already friends with your tech team or your IT people, because like you're hearing Tiffany say, Kelly say, it's one thing to get the data, but then to have it in a platform that others can see it, like that you can share it with your superintendent and your board. So all of our data was put into Looker Studio. And so we can, like they said, sort it by campus, sort it by, because it can be overwhelming to turn in the data in a visual way that others can understand it. And so if you haven't already gone to your tech friends, I think it would be one of my biggest recommendations is to go to your tech friends and see what you can do with your data to make it look to where others can understand it.
So since I created the template, I guess, once you create the template on Google Classroom, it's kind of like a teacher, right? Again, we're a big Google district, so I think for the most part, everyone is knowledgeable about Google Classroom. So the template is on the Google Classroom, created it for, you just provide like a code to all the counselors. As soon as they input the code, they're able to input their data. And so they input their data daily, but at the end of the month, they submit it, right? So we just compile every month their data, and we present to the counselors. Well, last year I was presenting to the counselors who's not in compliance and who's not. Now that they have access to the data, mainly the principals, maybe I should continue doing that. I'm not too sure if I should continue because now they can access the data daily. But as far as my experience with the ease or difficulty of the process, again, since I already had something in place, yes, Dr. Farber was talking about having somebody at the tech department. I am fortunate that I don't have to rely on the tech department. I do rely on the tech department for a lot of things, for the many work that I do. But for this one, I have like full control of it. So again, when it came to the audit, since there was already a system in place, and it was I don't want to say it was an easy process. I was just ecstatic about the audit because I knew it was going to make a big difference to what we're trying to accomplish here in our district.
Well, and I will see what I think with like any submission, as long as you have your information and you're ready to go, you're good. Because when you look at the letter that you receive, you have 1 month to submit. And so if you do not have a process or a system in place, it would be very difficult to pull all this information together in 1 month and to submit it and to be compliant. And so that is my recommendation, is having that system, having that process, so that if and when you do get the letter, it's not the panic mode. It's I've got it and I can just submit it and put it up. If you don't have the process, that will be a difficult 1 month if you don't have a process of how you pull it and how you can submit it.
Wonderful. So our final question is for every panelist. So y'all can kind of start getting ready. What was a positive outcome or benefit from your district going through this whole random selection process? And I will start with Dr. Sid. I'll start with you.
Thank you. Okay, so as I've said earlier, it was a struggle to implement the Senate Bill 179 counselor time at first. I knew I couldn't do it by myself. I needed help. And then no matter how many times I've talked about the Senate Bill 179, and we already had it also as a board policy. Again, it was very difficult to be in compliance with everything that's going on, right? But again, for me personally, best thing that ever happened is the audit, because now everyone is aware of the 80-20, and I want to give credit to my superintendent. We're a big district, right? So I want to give credit to our superintendent, deputy superintendent, assistant superintendents, because they were helping me also with the campus principals. I know how hard their job is, and they're in charge of so many things. So this is one of the things, that last thing that they have to take care of, right? But now everybody is aware of the 80-20. When we got audited, again, it was a struggle, keep that in mind. We had 23 counselors who were not in compliance out of the 48. So ever since we got audited and everybody is staying on top of the audit, last year we went from 23 to last year, which is 3, right? So I'm hoping that we will eventually get to 0, which is this year. So we continue to make adjustments. Like, for example, one of the adjustments that we're making as the principals can now see the logs on a daily basis. I have cluster meetings with the principals just to kind of check up on how everyone is doing with the compliance. And then I also kind of created like a quick reference guide. I call it a cheat sheet, so that because sometimes the 4 components are a little subjective if you look at the definition or the description, so that all the 48 counselors in our district are talking the same language, and we're inputting the same task in the same components. So I kind of created like a quick reference guide of the most common things that we all do, so that we are on the same page when it comes to inputting the data in what component of the Texas model, and which of the tasks that they do belong to non-counseling, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barron, you want to give us your thoughts?
Okay, I always love to share the good and tell the good of everything. So, I think some of the great things that came out of it for our district were the conversations that really started within the counselors, but also within our campus principals, as far as aligning roles and responsibilities of our counselors within our school district. I think this being selected, nobody likes to be selected, but being selected, I think, actually facilitated better conversations about what we could do, but also specifically looking at our elementary schools, of shifting responsibilities, because that is where we saw, I will always say, I was a former high school principal. There was always a statement of, we're working this and we're doing that, and this is not my responsibility. It finally highlighted and showed where we were, I will say, out of compliance. And then it really triggered that conversation to begin saying, what do we need to do differently? Where can the 504 coordinator's responsibilities shift to, but other responsibilities shift back that fall within those responsibilities of a counselor? And so I think that was some of the best thing. I think, like Dr. Sid mentioned, I think one thing that we did that has really helped our counselors is we have a counselor program tracking document for that consistency between our campuses. campuses because we color code it within their Google Calendar. There is examples under each one of those color codes so they can look at their cheat sheet and say, okay, I did academic advising and planning. That should fall under individual planning. And having that consistency. And then we talk we meet monthly as counselors, or I meet monthly with them. And we look at this program tracking sheet and we bring up the topics of what else needs to be added that we haven't discussed, what needs to be shifted and moved between, I call it our cheat sheet, and what do we want to do differently with it. And I can say probably at almost every meeting, there is a discussion of what about this or what about that? Because they want that consistency as well as counselors. And I think then that gives us true data that we're looking at with it. But I can always find all the good that can be found out of it, conversations, but also then looking at duties and responsibilities of what could be moved elsewhere to get us in compliance.
Wonderful. Ms. Coppett, how about your takeaway?
Yes, I don't really know. I mean, I'm just going to say, repeating what they've said. I mean, there was good and bad with anything. And, you know, some of it, you don't even know how good you are until it's on paper. So a lot of it, the stuff, like I said, I'm the only counselor. And so a lot of the stuff I did was, you know, I don't know how to describe it. I was doing it, but I wasn't writing down specifically where it went or how I was using the time. So then when this audit came through, I was like, oh, then I had to be specific on, yes, was I doing this with the most time or not? And some of it was, I didn't realize what some of the stuff I was doing could count for different areas. Because a lot of the stuff, yeah, I thought was maybe non-counseling duties, but then when you read some about it with the categories that were given, then it could kind of fall into some different areas. And so it was mostly, like I say, it was eye-opening to how we do affect students and faculty. And then it was like Tiffany said, it gave an opportunity for other people to see, oh, wait, maybe I can do that duty. Or for the school board to say, oh, wait, we need to get another person to do this. So it was, like I say, wasn't fun, but it wasn't horrible. Like you say, there were some positives there because, yeah, now we know how to better serve our students, and it's written down. So now you can say, yes, it's documented. I did that. We're doing right. So it was positive in a lot of ways too.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez.
Hey, so for us, it was positive in the sense that it really strengthened those conversations, like Kelly was saying. And one thing it allowed us to is get the message across that, oh, we're going to have to submit something to the state about our tracking. And so then it became serious because then people really respond to what's the law or what's required, right? And so it was very positive in that sense because our entire district knows that tracking is something that school counselors have to do now. And it just opened up those conversations. And what we found through looking at the data is our junior high school counselors need a little more support, and that group need a little more help. So we're going to be working with administrators and school counselors and, fine tuning the way they work. I really believe in working smart and not hard. And I think some of them are working a little bit too hard. And so we could see that in the data that they provide. And we too have our school counseling model, and then we have our definitions of what that is, a cheat sheet, so to speak, of what all that is, and then our directions on how you do this, when you do this. And so I think those clear instructions have really helped our school counselors. We ask for feedback. We ask if you have any questions about a particular task, let's talk about it and let's talk through it. But overall, we keep asking them last year at the end, how was your experience? And how they all see the positive, because I told school counselors, this is something for us to help make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. Look at it in a positive sense. because you can use that data, and we've already shown where we are able to use the data to get additional support. So it works. So look at it as a positive, because if we're tracking data, teachers have to track it. So we're just tracking what we do and making sure we are doing what we're supposed to do. So it's been a positive in that sense, but in the beginning, it didn't feel like that, but we had to change it around. We changed our mindset quickly and said, oh, well, if this is something that's going to happen, let's do it. We shifted our mindset to a positive attitude, and it's been good.
And Dr. Farber?
Okay, I think what came out of it most positively is we had tracked hours some time ago, even before we had to track hours. And over the years, we've been able to shift responsibilities. Like we have student service facilitators at high school and middle school that do 504 now. We've been able to shift most 504 and testing responsibilities. Elementary, as one of you spoke, is where we still are struggling. But the great thing is when we had passed the resolution, like if you have to turn in your policy, our school board had passed a resolution in like 2022 that our elementary counselors did not meet 80/20. But I can tell you by the time that we did the audit this past year, they were meeting 80/20. And so, but we had gone down that road and down that journey before we did the audit. And the other thing, I had the opportunity at the end of the year for my board report to share all of the data. And although they're meeting 80/20, the board inquired, they're like, are we understanding this correctly? That we're still really high in system support. It's part of the counseling program, but they were able to read and interpret the data and ask questions. And so it is bringing to light to others more what we do and what we could do in direct services versus indirect, given the opportunity